1. Today we're going to be talking about self-acceptance that includes sexual acceptance and why there's so many gay men and men in general that are actually opposing themselves to finding acceptance in what other people do. On today's show, we're going to be speaking to a special guest who has been a pillar in our gay community in Melbourne, and he's been able to use his voice in many, many avenues to spread the word about this topic. Hi, this is Joey Buttertool and welcome to the Secret Men's Business Podcast. On today's show, we're going to be speaking to Dean Beck, who's going to be talking about acceptance and about being able to use that acceptance in avenues that a lot of people deny themselves. Dean, how are you?
Joey, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much for the invitation, by the way. It's a thrill for me.
No, thank you. And I haven't seen you in a while. So I feel like these podcasts are an opportunity to catch up with people. So
yes, it's
really
been a long time.
Yeah. Now, I know that you've got a long resume of great things that you've done in the community and afar. So before we start, do you want to maybe just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your experience?
Sure. I guess I grew up in Bendigo in regional Victoria. Couldn't wait to get out of there. I came to Melbourne to study at RMIT to do fashion design and textile design. And then I went on to create a sort of career in marketing. And I had my own business for a while. And now I'm working in the government sector. So I've had a very varied career. But I guess when I first came to Melbourne, studying at uni, I got a job at Three Faces at the age of 21, and that's sort of where it all began as far as the community is concerned.
Yeah, I remember they were fun times. Well, the one thing that I always observed about you and loved about you is that you never shied away from being honest and authentic. And I guess today's topic is quite an open topic about why is there an issue with self-acceptance in our own community? Why is the community sort of like backlashing on what other people do? What do you think is the main driver for that, just generally? Why are gay guys bringing other gay guys down?
I think it's our Judeo-Christian internalized and externalized homophobia that is basically inherent within our broader society, within our broader community. And that reflects on our own self and the way we interpret and express ourselves. And sadly, it results in all sorts of things to the furthest extreme of suicide, but also some really poor decisions along the way. I'm not perfect, never have professed to be, but I own my mistakes. I am who I am, and I'm comfortable with that. And I've always expressed how I feel and what I think, and I'm happy to be wrong. But I like to engage in that conversation. And I think, sadly, these days we don't allow, or others don't allow us to have those robust conversations, and that's to our detriment.
Is that political correctness?
Partly it's the whole new paradigm for masculinity and the rise of women's equality, which I fully support. But it leaves men, particularly of my age group, I'm nearly 50, and those older, in a very confusing space. And that's a space where I think some gentle persuasion might work better than some heavy-handed bra burning.
I mean, you were saying before about you always accepting your mistakes and being open to other people, which, as a therapist, I feel it's a beautiful gift that you have. But unfortunately, not a lot of men have that, or men are now starting to learn that. So how did you learn that at such a young age? And why do you...
I didn't. It's a skill, I think. Well, it's partly a skill that I learnt through interviewing hundreds, thousands of people.
Yeah. So
in my years on radio.
you're letting people just tell you their story, and you don't have a right to tell them what to think or do, right? In a way.
I learned really when I first started in radio. I thought I had to be the expert on every subject that I was covering, and so I would do hours and hours of research for one interview that would last maybe 10, 15 minutes. And I very soon realized, after getting exhausted, that I didn't have to be the expert. I was interviewing the expert. All I had to do was ask the dumb questions that the expert was answering, and listen to their answers. And that's the key. Being able to shut up and to listen, I think, made me a better interviewer. It certainly enabled me to have conversations with people rather than interviews with people.
Yeah,
and that was the real key.
Yeah. I mean, not everyone can be a radio and DJ. So, why do you think guys in general now? Let's just expand it, because I don't think it's just about gay guys. But like, why are they not listening? Why are they so? I feel like there's a social media urgency to be able to share what you want to say, even if it comes at the detriment of someone else's, opinion, belief, sexual preference, whatever it is. It's like there's this thing that they have to share. I mean, like, why can't people just generally accept what other people do as okay?
Yeah, it's a great question. It would be lovely if we could just, let people be.
But you do, right? I sort of do. I'm just curious why other people can't, because they feel like they're right and what other people are doing are wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't tolerate stupidity very well, and I don't tolerate professional ineptitude very well. I get really angry over those sorts of things. So, in a working professional environment, and you profess to be something of some caliber, then you better bloody be it. And so I get pissed off with professional ineptitude more than I do with people who make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, that's fine. But that's what really gets my goat up. But to answer your question, why don't we let people be? I don't know. Expectation, I think, has got a lot to do with it.
Yeah. Do you think there's any fear there?
Yeah, absolutely. There's fear. I remember spending about 18 months with a certain owner of a gay nightclub that didn't get the concept of trans men and having trans men in an all-male environment. I'm glad I turned them around, but and we got there in the end. But that was a long process of advocating for people who I think are actually the professors of masculinity. They're the ones that know more about masculinity than any guy I know.
Oh my God! I was saying this exact same thing this morning, because I agree. Like, I think that if we watch that development and that evolution, I think as men we'll learn so much.
God, will we ever? Yeah, I mean, because from day dot, they have studied the intricacies of masculinity beyond that any individual who's born a man could ever understand. Because, whilst even as gay men we have struggles around other people's expectations of what masculinity is and our own expectations of what masculinity is, and we refine it through our own study, I guess, it's nothing compared to what trans men do.
Yeah. Because we were talking about sexual acceptance, and because the LGBTIQ community is so diverse in what we do, how do you feel the evolution of sexual freedom, which we now have started to feel, can allow everyone to sort of play around and do what they want without there being ostracization of different things? Like, we were talking before we went online about, I ran a section on the Secret Men's Business thing on BDSM, and a lot of people loved it and they said, thank you, we haven't talked about this for so long. But then I was surprised there were a lot of people that were really, they used really strong language like disgust and this is terrible, this is offensive. And I was really sort of blown away thinking, wow. And one person particularly wrote, I don't think this is appropriate for a men's group. So we're talking about men's sexuality. Wow. I know. So do you think there's a naive culture with some people in regards to liberation and evolution?
I'll let you in on a little secret. The reason I started out on radio was because I was sick and tired of gay men apologising for their own sexuality. It was something that I had learnt to embrace and cherish and celebrate and be thankful for and grateful for, because I knew that not everyone gets to experience the freedom of and the joy of sexuality that I was enjoying. I do enjoy, but I do that in a very positive space of affirming my own sexuality. Language like naughty, bad, evil, dark, I don't use to describe my sexuality. And when I was on air, I was very careful not to ever use that sort of language, because I think it puts it into a framework of negativity. And those that do use it and mean it, because most people, when they use that language, they don't actually mean it. Mm. Those that do mean it, I would run a mile from, because they're scary fuckers.
Right. What do you mean by they? Are you talking about real strong advocates that are going to push it and try and bring that sort of activity down?
No, well, there are very few, but there are people that their sexuality is expressed in dark, evil ways. I can't put it any other way.
Right. Okay.
And the few times that I've encountered such a person, I've run a million miles. Most people that use that language don't actually mean.
Yeah.
What they're saying.
They're sort of insecure, aren't they? There's like it's lack of knowledge.
No, they use it as a fantasy term, right? But not as they're not really thinking that they're being a naughty boy. They're just, or they're the devil incarnate. They're just using those icons to express themselves in a fantasy realm. That's fine, but it's not how I choose to express my sexuality. Yeah. That is something that I celebrate, I love and enjoy.
What if they're actually using that language to describe someone else, though? Like, what would you say?
Then they better mean it.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? And if they don't mean it, don't use that language.
Yeah. Okay. So have you seen a lot of that? Like when people say things and they're really...
No, I check people on it. I say, do you really mean what you're saying?
That's good.
Because if they do, then I know where I'm at and I'm out of there.
Yeah.
I'm very clear on what I like sexually, have been all the way along. And I've run classes about what I like sexually to both gay and straight audiences. I ran a anal pleasure class to a mixed audience of men and women who identified sort of as queer, but a lot of them were in a heterosexual relationship, and all of the women wanted to know about how to fist their male partners. Funnily enough, straight men have the same pleasure centers as gay men. Who would have thought?
Yeah. Do you mind if I pick your brain? Because for myself and even for the listeners, it's like I love your openness and your ability just to be who you are. And I know you said that you taught yourself, but was there a factor that made you so comfortable with yourself and your body and what you did? Because, you do realize that a lot of guys don't have that.
Yeah, I had two really amazing mentors. Okay. And I also went to Australia's foremost leading celebrity sex therapist, who was an absolute fucktard. And after 3 or 4 sessions with her,
was that on Punt Road?
Yes, it was, funnily enough.
I know you're talking about.
And after my first session with her, she said, "Can you bring in all of your fisting videos for me to watch?" And after the second session, she said, "Would you be the subject of my next book?" So anyway, I think I was going in the night before my fourth session with her, and I was only going to because my then boyfriend had convinced me that I was some sort of sexual deviant and quite fucked up. I was on the phone to one of my sexual mentors who was in Sydney, and we were chatting, and I was in tears saying, "I've got to go and see this woman tomorrow morning." And he said, "Have you ever thought that you're just a fucking filthy pig and that's okay?" And with that, everything lifted from my shoulders.
Wow.
All of that crap fell away. I walked into her office at 9:00 in the morning. I threw $175 down on her desk and I said, "I'm cured. See ya." And out I went.
So you just found an opportunity to get self-acceptance through that voice. And, you know, so it really is, it's not complicated, isn't it? But I think people make it complicated by allowing, I know everyone's got their own stuff, but I guess a lot of guys don't like looking at their stuff. So they project, right? I think now it's changing.
My partner at the time was doing exactly that.
Exactly.
Yes, that's right.
So he looked at you and put all his stuff onto you.
Correct.
But really deep down, was he dirty as well?
Oh, he was in denial of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And was envious of
you were younger.
My self-assuredness.
Yeah.
No, he was younger than me.
Mm. I know this might sound like a weird question, but do you feel that there needs to be a justification to an audience that doesn't understand that type of sex, or do you think that it's none of their business? You know what I mean? Like there seems to be this defensiveness, or do we just get on with it and say, you know what, look, you don't get it, go away?
Marriage equality has brought our community some tremendous rewards. The fight for it saw the rise of the White Picket Fence Brigade, and they have been fighting for years to be accepted in the broader community. Whilst there are others who really don't want to be accepted by the broader community. They're quite happy to be the freaks and on the outside, and they weren't going down, or some of them were going to the marches for marriage equality as a sign of support for the broader community. But they knew that marriage wasn't for them, and it's certainly not for me. I haven't had a relationship for nearly 20 years.
And so do you think there's also another side to getting the equality? Like, did we lose certain things? Like, you know, the sexual openness is now, it's all sort of open now versus, I don't know. That's why I asked the question, because it seems to be a lot more of a trend and a lot more prying eyes in regards to, you know, everyone wanting to sample and do different things, but not everyone can go in there and be like you and be open and accepting. I think some people go in there and feel that they don't belong there, or some people love it. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think everybody should be allowed to be who they want to be. Yeah. And if you want to be, you know, with the dog and husband and 3 surrogate kids and all of that in the White Picket Fence, that's great. Do it. But don't deny the dirty, filthy pigs in the fuck clubs their right to have their fun. You know, that's their business. It's none of yours. Yeah. You've got 3 kids to worry about. You know, get your nose out of their business.
What do you feel like is the future in regards to the way men see themselves? I know it's just, you know, I know that we can all guess, but do you think that we are going to get to a point where all of this stuff's going to slow down and we can just accept things, or is this always going to be an ongoing thing? I
look at the generation that's sort of 20 years ahead of where I am, or 10 years ahead of where I am. I look at my generation, and then I look at 20 years behind, because, you know, I still engage with all ages, and it amazes me what a difference there is, and,
Yeah.
and I feel sort of stuck in this middle of this time shifting change, which I would hope would change without it having to be a process of elimination by die-off,
Yeah.
by extinction. But the evolution's already happening, and young kids today
Yeah.
really
What
don't.
are they? Are they just open to everything?
Well, they don't define themselves as
Yeah.
being gay, straight, bi, whatever. They enjoy the company of people that they're with, and if that means having sex with them, then they do it, and
Yeah.
that's great.
It is great. And so a lot of older people get insecure because, I'm older than you, but I'm quite young in mind, and I love the excitement of what they bring. But some people want things defined because that's where we've come from,
Yes.
versus the freedom, because they don't understand the freedom. One thing that I was going to say though with the younger guys that I've noticed, and this might not be something that you want to talk about, but I noticed that there is an issue with consent, because I've been seeing a few clients who have been raped lately as men, right?
Yeah.
And but there doesn't seem to be a dialogue around how to talk about that, because it's all brushed under and laughed at. How do we because BDSM really is one of the best consenting activities. There's a lot of consent in that realm. How do we navigate that? How do we navigate consent?
And there is the occasional abuse in that realm too. Let's not forget that.
Okay.
And that abuse is often masked by
the
roles that people play. That's right. But let's put that aside for the moment. The first ever episode of my sex program on radio was about consent.
Okay.
Episode number 1.
Was it about sex consent or BDSM consent, or just
no, just consent as a foundation? Just consent as a foundation. As gay men, we've never been good at it because we use everything else but language to think that we've got consent. I listened to the episode that you did with David Stewart from the UK
Yes.
around chemsex, and some fascinating things that he said about environments where people pass out, and we know that under law, if you are drunk or if you've been taking drugs, by law you can't consent.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah, well, you're unconscious.
Well, not even if you're unconscious. If you've been drinking or if you're under the influence of drugs, under the law, you cannot consent. Period.
I didn't know that. So, is that well known?
No, well, we still do consent in that space, but under the law, you can't give consent because you're under the influence of a drug.
Right.
That's what the law says. So if you buy someone a drink or 3 and then go and have sex with them, you're in a real dicey area. And there have been people who've been convicted in that space who have bought people drinks and have thought that they've gone with consent to have sex, and then that other person has used it against them. Sometimes it's used, against them in a vindictive way.
Are we talking about male, or are we talking about male, female?
Both.
Yeah. Because I was going to ask you, there has been a lot of issues with men raising that sort of stuff and the police not doing anything. So I thought we were actually far away from men getting the attention that they need versus women. But I guess, I don't know enough about it to actually know if that's true or not. But when I remember I was sexually assaulted when I was younger, and it was in that situation. I was at a party and I fell asleep and I woke up to something happening. But it was all sort of laughed at because it was men, you know what I mean? But now looking back years and years later, now that all of this talk's coming up, it's like, oh my God, I think I was sexually abused. But, you forget it.
I've had friends that have passed out in saunas that have woken up with, 10 guys standing around them. And, they've spent years in trying to deal with that, trying to deal with the fact that they were raped.
Why don't we talk about this enough? Why do you think that? Because I think that's a really valid point. When you go to a sauna or a venue and you see people like off their head. Like you say, now that I know that raw thing, and it's sort of like people think that that's because they're in a sling that they're consenting, but the reality is that they don't even know what's going on, and we don't talk about it.
No, we don't. And you know, that there are individuals who prey on that situation. There are others that also act in that situation that actually don't know what they, you know, that what they're doing is actually raping. I get that, but
And
ignorance
there's also guys that actually stop it.
ignorance is not a defense under law either.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a conversation we desperately need to.
Yeah, I was going to say how do we, like, is it through this sort of forum, like just by chatting to people and getting people to listen?
Well, Joey, as big as your audience is and as diverse and wide as it is globally, I heard you say, I'm not quite sure whether this is going to be enough. You know, I think it should be in our education system. I think it should be part of something that we're taught from about age 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest issues that we have in our society is that we don't acknowledge that children have a sexuality. Children do have a sexuality. I was sexually active from the age of 5.
Yeah.
You know, and I wasn't abused. I was just sexually active.
Yeah, I agree. I acknowledge that because a lot of people do have trauma associated to their sexuality, but I think more people are probably just open to their development and just becoming active. But I think that's something to think about in regards to talking about it. I'm surprised that it's not a bigger like forum. You know what I mean? It's like lower on the list in regards to other things, which is just something that interests me. Like I know
it's fundamental to our society working harmoniously, and it's also part of the reason why at the moment we've got all of this drama around toxic masculinity and all these sorts of things. It all stems from a good sex education from about the age of 4 or 5 probably would alleviate a lot of this shit.
Yeah. Dean, I could talk to you for hours. I have to go, and we've been talking for more than half an hour, so I knew this would happen. So thank you so much. And you know, the thing is that you have, I don't know, you don't do any podcasts now, do you?
No, I don't. No, not at the moment.
Well, I just personally think that people like yourself are needed and required. So thank you for saying yes and spending time with me, and thank you for sharing insights, and I appreciate it very much.
It's been an absolute delight, Joey. Thank you so much for asking me.
So you've been listening to the Secret Men's Business podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button below, and make sure that you ring the bell so you get notified of all the new podcasts that come up. Now, don't forget, Mondays, we have a brand new podcast. On Thursdays, you do retro podcasts and listen to some of our older versions. All right, guys, thank you so much and have a good week. Bye.